Hello and welcome to episode 48 of Can We Still Be Friends, a podcast that tests the limits of the friendship between two people who mistake movie taste for personal morality. I'm Nate Goss, here once again with Ryan Ebling. This year's award season has already begun, with the Golden Globes doling out the first of the major awards. And as expected, La La Land is looking like a frontrunner, having won several Golden Globes, including Best Director for Damien Chazelle and Best Picture, Musical, or Comedy. Since La La Land is a throwback to classic Hollywood musicals, we decided to revisit one of the most revered Hollywood musicals in the movie Chazelle pays homage to in La La Land, Singin' in the Rain.
Singin' in the Rain was a huge hit at the time, though it only earned 2 Oscar nominations, one for supporting actress Jean Hagen and one for its score. History has been much kinder to the film, with the American Film Institute naming it the #1 movie musical and the 5th best movie of all time. Its songs and dance numbers have become iconic, and filmmakers of all stripes cite it as a strong influence.
But has time been kind to the spectacle of Singin' in the Rain?
Or is it true what they say? If you've seen one, you've seen them all. Keep listening.
Such a freak at this studio. I told you talking pictures were a menace, but no one would listen to me. Don, we're going to put our best feet forward. We're going to make the Dueling Cavalier into a talking picture.
Talking picture? Well, that means I'm out of a job. At last I can start suffering and write that symphony.
You're not out of a job. We're putting you in as head of the new music department.
Well, thanks, Ref. At last I can stop suffering and write that symphony.
Now, wait a second, Mr. Simpson. Talking pictures. I think you should wait
Every studio is jumping on the bandwagon, Dexter. All the theaters are putting in sound equipment. We don't want to be left out of it.
We don't know anything about this gadget.
What do you have to know? It's a picture. You do what you always did. You just add talking to it.
Yeah?
Don, believe me, it will be a sensation. Lamont and Lockwood, they talk.
Well, of course we talk. Don't everybody?
So that is the head of the studio telling them that they've got to transition from silent pictures to talking pictures.
The talkies.
The talkies, yeah.
They're here,
a
Ryan.
new era. I've heard. Now that I think about it, I've seen several talkies.
Right. I don't think I could ever go back after seeing them.
No. It's a watershed moment, and it's tough to not hear people talk once
Right.
you've heard them talk.
Exactly.
But that is basically the central conflict of the movie. How do they transition from silent pictures to talking pictures? And
Yeah, it's pretty much the setup for all the singing and dancing.
yeah, and then
Of
everybody
Singin'
sings and dances. Yeah, and that's it. So what they're talking about, that was actually a big problem for some silent film stars. They
yeah.
they had terrible voices.
Not
So,
all of them transitioned very well.
Right. Killed a few careers. But I guess that's as much plot as you can say this movie has.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit in the intro about why we are talking about Singing in the Rain. It's not like it's an anniversary.
No.
Although, now here's the thing. We announced this movie
Yeah.
way back in our Die Hard episode, which was recorded, weeks before
Yeah,
Christmas.
about a month ago.
Yeah. We had no clue
Of
what
course.
was going to happen.
No. And so, unfortunately, there's another tie-in. Debbie Reynolds passed away the day after Carrie Fisher, her daughter, passed away, or 2 days after?
Day or 2 days.
So near the end of December, obviously we had no idea that was going to be happening, but it did. I think it sent a lot of people back to this movie.
Right.
So
And I, rewatching it for this episode, there's no way now to rewatch it and not kind of have that in your mind as you're watching it. So.
yeah, because this is one of her first movies, if not her first movie.
First movie,
She was 19 when she made this. So we'll definitely talk more about her performance, I'm sure, as we discuss this movie. But the movie, on top of having a tie-in with La La Land, has become more relevant, sadly. But the big thing we were kind of looking for when we watched this movie was the idea of the movie musical, and how this sort of has set the tone for a few things to come after it. Obviously, it wasn't the first movie musical, but it is one that has been extremely influential, and it's the one who stood the test of time. Like I said, the AFI called it the 5th best movie of all time in their top 100 list in 2007. So on top of having La La Land kind of in the discussion now, it's just one that I don't think it ever hurts to go back and see.
It's kind of like it's always going to be mentioned when you're talking about classic American cinema, really. We predicted that La La Land was going to remain a talking point, even though it's been released. It was released before Christmas, right? Like before Christmas. But, it did just recently win quite a few Golden Globe Awards.
Yeah. Did it win all 7 that it was nominated for?
Yeah. I mean, Emma Stone won, Ryan Gosling won.
I think it won for the score. I think it won for the song.
Right. So certainly a lot more people are seeing that movie, and I think that it's I actually did have a chance to see it last night. You still have not seen it, but I'm sure you'll
I'll make it a priority.
But it was an interesting exercise to watch the two back to back, because I literally watched Singin' in the Rain the night before I watched La La Land. So it'll be good to kind of talk about comparing the two. And in the Golden Globes, Chazelle talked a lot about it being such a risky thing to make La La Land. Like how it was such a risk, and all these Lionsgate putting up the risk to make this movie. And so it's interesting to think that you have Singin' in the Rain, which is considered like everyone loves it and it's like a classic, and yet to make a movie like that now is such a risk. And so why is that? I think we can definitely talk about that a little bit.
I think I'm sure we will. So since we've got so much that we want to talk about the movie, let's get our preliminary stuff out of the way. Let's talk about first time we saw it, initial rating, and if we've re-rated it. I don't have like a big story about seeing Singin' in the Rain the first time.
No, I don't.
I mean, we say this all the time. It was one that I felt like I had to see. I hadn't seen it, so I watched it. I can't tell you how many years ago that was.
I was pathetically late to the game.
Oh,
Singin' in the Rain.
Definitely. I mean, it wasn't a part of my childhood.
No,
it's strange how big a part of my life movies are, but how few movies I saw growing up.
Right.
I think I just saw the same movies over and over and over again. And then that just kind of got me into movies in general. And there was just this big explosion at the end of high school and college where I just saw everything.
Right. I saw Singin' in the Rain for the first time after college.
I think it was probably after college.
My first exposure to Singin' in the Rain was in the film class we took together, where our professor in our film class showed the clip where there's the audio malfunctions because the audio isn't syncing up well with the silent film, and shows a lot of the comedy. In the movie, it's comedy, but also he was actually showing it in that class as an example of like the sort of
the problems people had.
The problems people have had going into sound.
I do the same thing in my film class when I teach about the transition to sound. I show that scene.
Do you really? Yeah. So it's probably you're exposing your students to a classic in that way. That was my first exposure at all to Singin' in the Rain.
Yeah.
And I can tell you what made me. I knew I had to fill in that gap after I graduated college, but what made me actually pick it up and sit down and watch it was I worked at the library, and I worked in the AV department at the library, and there was a time where everyone working there was going around and talking about their all-time favorite movie. And I think I might have mentioned this before. If I get forced to answer that question, I always say The Big Lebowski.
Right.
Evan, who was on our last episode, was there, and when he was forced to answer, he said Princess Bride. I remember that. and I remember there was just this woman we worked with. She retired pretty soon after we worked there. She watched movies, but she wasn't like she wouldn't call herself a film buff.
Sure.
But she said her favorite film was Singin' in the Rain, and it just sounded like the best choice. Like she one-upped all of us. Even though I had never seen it, it just sounded like such a...
Your choice was just garbage. Yeah.
I was like, really? And she's like, oh, it's just such a lovely film, and I've seen it so many times, and she's like, I just can't think of a better film than that. And I was like, okay. And I watched it, but I think if you're in that stage where you're just filling in a lot of gaps, you see so many amazing movies that it's almost sometimes you overlook how amazing a movie is when you see it. Like it's just sort of one in a bunch.
Right.
And so I gave it 4 stars on Letterboxd the first time I watched it, and I liked it a lot. I enjoyed a lot of it, but I kind of just watched it and forgot about it.
I can't even envision where I was when I saw it. If I was at my parents' house, one of my apartments after college, I have no idea. But I've seen it, and I remember elements of it really sticking with me. But I rated it a 4.5, which is kind of funny because I feel like I didn't remember it very well before I rewatched it. So did it change on a rewatch? You sound like 4 wasn't doing it justice.
Yeah, and I remember us talking before we actually rewatched this movie, and I was telling you how, like, before rewatching it, my perception was that this was like a really long movie.
Yeah. and it's not really.
And I was getting ready to like settle in for like an epic, you know, or like a long musical.
Something with an intermission and change the disc or something.
My memory of this movie was just very odd. So anyways, you know, after rewatching it now, this is a 5-star movie for me.
Okay.
I don't know what it was about the first time I watched it, but this time around, I'm like, I just can't imagine not loving this movie. You know, I don't know. It's certainly a 5-star movie for me at this point.
It's interesting. It felt longer this time for me.
Really?
Yeah. And I'm not sure why. But I'm very interested to talk to you. So I'm going to hold off on changing my rating.
Was it going to be lower?
I was toying with the idea of going to 4.
Because 4.5 is still really good.
No, I know. And 4 is not bad.
By any means, no.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to, for the first time ever in Can We Still Be Friends history, I'm going to hold off on rating it a
Can
second
you do
time.
that? Can you?
Can we? We're looking. I'm seeing nods. I've got 2 nods out of the 4 judges, which is a really bad. Why do we have an even number of? Oh, Gary's at home.
Well, we'll let it be. The judges have spoken, so I guess we'll just have to.
Nodded.
So what does that mean, though?
They're
I mean
not
that
allowed to speak.
it puts the conversation in a weird spot. Like, do I have to kind of like
No,
defend this or
no? Not at all. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm
Okay.
saying I just feel like there are probably things that I have overlooked or I watched with tiredness.
Sure.
When I watch this, that I'm feeling like
we do 48 episodes of this thing, and sometimes you just got to get it in time to record.
Yes. So yep, that's pretty much the case for Singing in the Rain this time. So I'm holding off just because I feel like I don't. I just can't really, based on my viewing last night, honestly say what I think about all the elements.
Okay.
That I experienced. So let's get into it then.
So let's start. Neither one of us thinks this is like a bad movie.
No.
What I thought would be an interesting question to ask,
to
throw out.
Okay.
Because I was trying to think of how to make this not a boring episode. And also an episode where...
We've never thought that before.
A boring episode where we just talk about how much we love Singing in the Rain.
Sure.
The other thing about this movie in particular is it's such a classic that it's going to be hard for us to say something that hasn't already been said better by like an esteemed film critic or film scholar, you know?
Right.
So I think it's more just going to be about talking about our personal experience with it.
Sure.
And so my question I kind of want to throw out is, you know, if you do like this movie, if you had to nail down one, what is your favorite part about? What's your favorite moment in this movie?
It's still Make 'Em Laugh.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so hard to not just be blown away in so many ways by that performance.
It's got everything in that, like in those like 3 minutes, whatever it is. He does everything. Like he's super funny. He's super physical. And within that physicality, there's like 15 different things he's doing.
You don't even have time to respond to everything he does.
Because there are times where it's like just slapstick, he's just hurting himself funny, and there's times where he floats. It goes from some of the most graceful actions you've ever seen to some of the most acrobatic to like some of the base level, like a guy fell on the floor in a funny way.
Yeah. And then even the sort of rubberized like Jim Carrey facial expressions.
Yeah. And the wordplay, just the wordplay. Like it's a funny song. And the fact that he's singing and there's times where you can like hear him like not be able to sing because of what he's doing. Then add to that the story that Donald O'Connor was pretty much laid up for 3 or 4 days after that.
Yeah.
And then an accident ruined the film.
So he had to
and he
redo
had
the whole
to do
thing?
it again.
I remember that, yeah. Something about how someone didn't check the aperture on the camera, so he had to redo the whole thing.
Yeah, and so he did. Make 'Em Laugh still just blows me away.
Just the way it starts with him jumping up on that piano that way. I like watch
does
that.
he do that?
I don't know. How does he do?
And there's even like a little moment where he just kind of skips over a pole, like it's kind of like a support for a door.
Yeah.
And he puts his hand on it and skips over it. But you don't like see the mechanics of his jump. He just kind of floats over it because the muscle control of Donald O'Connor in that, like, he must be so strong.
Yeah.
Just like, it's athletic, his performance.
Yeah. Well, and so much of the dancing in Singin' in the Rain is.
Yeah.
Even when you don't think it is. One of the best things I did watching this movie was
try to dance along with it.
Yeah, just try it. Yeah, you'll see.
I did. Yeah. I mean, I got through it and I got most of the stuff, but my tap is just a little rusty, really.
Well, there's a bonus feature on the Blu-ray where there's just a bunch of other choreographers talking about Singing in the Rain.
Mm-hmm.
And when they point out the parts that are impressive to them, you're like, wow. Slight quick detour from Make 'em Laugh. There's the love song between Debbie Reynolds and Gene Kelly on the soundstage. It's the song You Were Meant for Me. There's a scene where he kind of lifts her up off the ladder, and she does a slight little flex in her muscles that you barely even notice, but it's basically what lets her seem airless, or light.
She's got her arms around his neck, and he's holding her. I actually did notice. Did you? I was watching it because I've done musical theater before, and I've had to do lifts before, and it's so hard. Lifting another human being is really, really difficult, and he just like eases her down,
right?
Like it looks so easy. And
she looks light as a feather, and
I did notice she is like tensing her arms, but
it's all her, and that's the thing.
I've got a dance background,
right.
so
of course, yeah. And I'm glad that you were able to bring that into the podcast today.
I was, yeah. Doesn't happen enough.
But going back to Make 'em Laugh, I showed my 3-year-old boys a couple of the dance sequences. They didn't care for really any of them, but Make 'em Laugh, they watched 5 times in a row.
Wow.
They just kept saying, do it again. And they laughed harder and harder each time after he's dancing with the dummy.
Yeah.
And they fall off the couch. They thought that was like the funniest thing ever. And then that's when he just starts falling like crazy.
Right.
And like they just couldn't stop laughing.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So is there a moment or a scene or an aspect for you that really?
Yeah, my favorite moment, and it's nothing super impressive, but I just love the very, very, very beginning of Gene Kelly's Singing in the Rain. Like when he's walking out and he's sort of like, just so happy because he's obviously falling in love. And I love how it transitions into that song with just a little melody and him just kind of going do 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 do
I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain. What a glorious feeling, I'm happy again.
There's not many times where I think I could really pinpoint, like, that's like movie magic. The fact that there's really not anything on the face of it that's that special going on right there, but there's something about everything in it, like the way he's walking, the setting.
The smile on his face, like the way he acts it. That's something I noticed this time a lot more, is that Gene Kelly was a great performer.
Yeah.
Apparently a horrible person to work with, but a great performer, because I never would have guessed that of him. But yeah, I know what you're talking about, that very beginning.
But I mean, that whole sequence is great.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong.
And apparently improvised by Gene Kelly.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
They had where he was going to enter and where he was going to exit.
That whole sequence to me it just seems like you're watching something special, and it could exist completely on its own, like as a short film, and Definitely. It would just be great. There's that first moment that I really love, but I also love the very end. This is like the signature number. This is the song Singing in the Rain. Mm-hmm. And instead of going huge with like a big number, it's just him, first of all. But second of all, the ending, the actual, like, sort of, I guess if you would call it the climax, is really just him splashing around in puddles like a kid. Like, it's nothing huge. He's not even doing anything terribly impressive dance-wise in that moment. There are other moments in there where he certainly is, but like, it just ends with him splashing around like a kid in puddles.
Yeah.
And
just being joyful.
Yeah, exactly. It just fits so well.
I love that it ends quietly too. It just ends in that with the same, just like it begins.
Right. We were both talking off the mic about how we listened to Damien Chazelle, the director of La La Land. Mm-hmm. We listened to his interview on NPR talking about making La La Land. And I remember him saying in that interview that one of the hardest things about musicals is figuring out how to transition into a song. And also,
like
he kind of
how to do
right.
it.
I was like, that's just such a perfect example of how to do it the very right way. But then also thinking about La La Land and what Damien Chazelle was kind of really trying to do with that movie and making it a film musical, not just a musical put to film. You see that in that Singin' in the Rain too, where you see like that this is a dance routine that works best on camera because the camera almost dances with him. Like it sort of glides along with him through a lot of it. And then there's like the best shot where it's like a big crane kind of shot where it kind of zooms out and around the whole street sort of where it needs to. Like it's right up on him. And then when it needs to, it just kind of comes out. It's like the camera in conjunction with his dancing is what makes that scene work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's his partner almost in that scene.
Right. And it's mostly, I don't think it was all done in one take, but it's a lot of long takes.
Yes.
So it's not like when we talked about Moulin Rouge, which we both love that movie, but the way it's shooting a lot of that is a lot of like multi-camera stuff so that it can cut where it needs to. Yeah. And here it's making use of the camera, but it's also showing you that these are performers and they are performing this entire thing. You know?
And a lot of times I think when you see musicals that use the one like a long take, when it's done lazily, it's like this could have just been on a stage. Like there wasn't a reason for this. You just filmed a stage performance. And I almost think that the fast cutting is like making a case. Like you couldn't do this on a stage. This isn't a movie. But you're right. Like you can still do a long take, very stage-ish sort of dancing, but use the camera in a way. Everything you said. I'm just repeating you.
But they do it in every song. I mean, if you look at like Moses Supposes, it starts with them kind of by a window with the curtains, and then it moves over on the other side of the room to a desk, and then I think it goes back there. But like the camera is just moving around with them. They're using the entire room, which I know was kind of one of Gene Kelly's things in choreography, is always trying to use what was in the room as props, which of course you see in like Good Morning. You know?
Oh yeah. I mean, that scene where they go from one couch to the other.
Yeah.
Like that's all they're doing, but it's such a rush when all of a sudden they're like moving and the camera's moving with them, and then it like zooms back over the couch and you're like, oh, that couch is there? And like, I don't know. It's just like, it's such a weird thing, but like all that happened in that one shot that I'm talking about in Good Morning, where they're on a couch and then the camera like moves back and they're like coming at the camera. For some reason, when I see the couch there, I don't know. There was something about it that I was like,
I know what you mean. And what I love about that scene in particular in Good Morning is my memory of it, of course, is that they end just sort of plopping down on the couch.
Yeah.
And I kind of forgot that there's a couch that they sort of, do they jump over it or something?
Well, they kind of like
there's two
step
couches
on it and it like they flip it.
That's the one that they land on.
Yeah.
But there's a couch before that that they sort of do something on.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting sort of twist, I guess.
Right.
Like the couch that they plop down on is actually the couch that fell over. You know, like, and they're sitting on the back of the couch.
Yeah. I don't know why this time I was just like, all that happened is the couch comes into frame, and I was just like, whoa, like it was.
But isn't that? I mean, that's what can be great about dance numbers in movies, but especially in Singin' in the Rain, is that like the ordinary becomes very extraordinary. So like them walking up and down stairs is just like the most amazing thing you've ever seen. In Good Morning, the way that they walk up those stairs, and in a way where it's like, again, they make it look so effortless.
They just float.
That, especially those top two stairs going up them, they kind of do a little swinging action where it's almost like, how did they even get up? Like, how did they get up those two stairs? Like, what did I just see? Really?
Right.
You know?
Well, it's like we were talking about Donald O'Connor jumping up on the piano.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine myself doing that, and I'm like, there's no way the piano doesn't fall over.
There's no way that, like, you don't fall over it and break your neck, and
Right.
then there's, like, a bad dissonant piano note that just sort of gets played.
Right.
I'm kind of laughing thinking of it right now, actually.
It could be funny.
In its own
It would
right.
make them laugh. And I was thinking, like, there aren't people like Donald O'Connor or Gene Kelly anymore.
Maybe on stage. I'm just very out of that world, so I don't know.
Sure. On stage, I'm sure there are, but dancers aren't stars.
True.
Especially male dancers are not stars in Hollywood. Even like the beginning, The Fit is a Fiddle, song where they're supposed to be kind of hack performers.
Yeah.
It's still unbelievable.
Right.
I think that's probably what Damien Chazelle was talking about when he said like taking a risk, because a leading actor who has to dance and like,
Sure.
He actually said something I thought was interesting that reminds me of something you said, where how like Singin' in the Rain could be a short film.
The song "Singing in the Rain," you mean?
The sequence.
The
sequence. Yeah. Because he got his start in experimental cinema, and he looked at musicals, and he's like, musicals are big budget experimental films. Like, you're just trying to evoke things, and you're doing things. People are doing things in musicals that people wouldn't do in a movie that had no singing in it.
Right.
And I think the best movie musicals do have that avant-garde, what am I even seeing, sort of element to them. And this has it all over the place, mainly for me, although partly filmmaking, but mainly in the choreography and mainly in the way that they move and dance, which Debbie Reynolds didn't have any dance
That's
training
insane.
when she started this movie.
Right. And to see her do Good Morning with Donald O'Connor.
That's a tough name
It
to
is.
say.
I keep wanting to say Donald O'Connell,
Me too.
but it's not.
Donnie O'Con.
Okay, with Donnie O'Con and Gene Kelly, these two like super, and the fact
Keeping
that
up with them.
the fact that she does it, and if you didn't know that as trivia,
Right.
that she wasn't a dancer, there's no way you would look at that and say, "Oh, she must not be a dancer." You
Yeah.
know? Like there's no way. She just completely pulls it off. And again, that sequence has just the same type of long takes as Gene Kelly doing Singing in the Rain. So she had to actually pull it off. It couldn't be sort of hidden behind cuts and, you know, maybe bringing in a stunt person to do a close up of the feet and, you know.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, she was in between those two. So if she was missing anything, it would be very apparent.
Now, here's what I thought though about that is I was thinking it's incredible that she was able to convincingly pull that off. But it also is sort of...
It shows how easy it is.
Of course. you put enough time into it and you can do anything.
That's fine.
Really. Yeah.
It's not as impressive as we're making it out to be. I agree.
But one thing I thought about was it almost makes sense that casting-wise they would pick someone who didn't have dance experience because she just seems like one of them in that scene. And I don't know how easy that would be to pull off because if you look at the Broadway Melody with Sid Charisse, you know, a very accomplished dancer and ballerina, and that sequence is great for its own reasons. But can you imagine Sid Charisse doing that Good Morning sequence? It just doesn't seem like, because in that sequence, Debbie Reynolds, character-wise and as an actress, just seems like one of the guys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's because Gene Kelly was able to kind of sculpt and shape her as a dancer exactly what he needed for that scene. She didn't have all that sort of
apparently not very
experience.
gently.
No. Apparently it was
he made her
as bad
cry
as
every
childbirth.
day. Yeah. But you're right. There's that works because of the camaraderie,
right?
More than the technical, even though the technical is great and
it's like
tremendously impressive.
It's sort of a combination, but
yeah. And let's talk about Debbie Reynolds for a little bit now. To be honest, I have not seen all that much of her work.
I think this is the only movie I've seen of hers.
That may be. So certainly we are not the ones to do her career and her abilities justice, but we can talk about this movie. And I was struck this time especially by just how magnetic she is from the first time you see her.
Mm-hmm.
There is something about her that is so expressive and welcoming, and to me, I don't know who else it could be, that it's so believable that he falls in love with her after a brief car ride.
Mr. Lockwood, I really can't tell you how sorry I am about taking you for a criminal before, but it was understandable under the circumstances. Sure. I knew I'd seen you.
Which of my pictures have you seen?
I don't remember. I saw one once.
You saw one once?
Yes, I think you were dueling, and there was a girl, Lena Lamont. No, I don't go to the movies much. If you've seen one, you've seen them all.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, no offense. Movies are entertaining enough for the masses, but the personalities on the screen just don't impress me. I mean, they don't talk, they don't act, they just make a lot of dumb show. Well, you know. Like that.
You mean like what I do?
Well, yes. Here we are, sunset in Camden.
The way she banters with him, I don't know, there's just something so genuine about her vivacity.
It's a tricky combo in that scene because you're talking about when he literally drops into her car,
right?
You know, because he's trying to get away from all his fans.
Yeah.
You get everything about her character in that scene, I think. She comes off as someone who I think is so magnetic and who you immediately as a viewer are attracted to. She just seems like a very kind and generous person, but also very independent thinking.
Yes.
Like also a person who isn't really swayed much by whatever charms Don Lockwood thinks he just inherently has, you know. Part of it's in the dialogue, but a lot of it is just in the way she sells that dialogue with her facial expressions. And part of it also, I think, is that she's the driver. Like, she's the one who's in control in that scene.
Yeah.
A lot of it could be attributed to good screenwriting, but Debbie Reynolds is what makes that character and carries it through the rest of the movie. Because the other just memorable moment that floored me, because it's so classic Hollywood, but she pulls it off in a way that is so timeless, is that close-up of her as she's sort of leaving the theater at the very, very end. And he's like, stop that woman, you know, and it just zooms in right into her face. And it's just, she's very heartbroken in that moment. And there's a lot going on where she's realizing a lot in that moment. But then you also just get that classic Hollywood, like this is like a star, you know? And there's a lot being said in that too, because it's a movie about movies. So it's sort of like, this is the shot. This is like the Hollywood shot. But it feels so much more real than any other time it's ever been done.
She
you know,
gives this tremendously complex performance for a character who shouldn't necessarily be so complex, because it's a bit of a stock character, the young struggling starlet,
wannabe actress. But very much, she's basically the Emma Stone character in La La Land. You know,
who could have been played a lot less independent than she is. You get the sense that she could take or leave Don at the beginning.
Right.
But then you also get the sense that she really does love him, but she doesn't necessarily love him for anything other than who she knows he can be.
Right. And she is trusting, but still not gullible.
No.
You know?
She's tremendously strong.
Yes, and even to the point where when she knows she's sort of been taken advantage of. There's that at the very end when they basically said, you're going to go back there and you're going to sing, you know? Obviously, as a viewer, you kind of get the idea something else is going on. But from her perspective, she's being terribly taken advantage of.
Kathy, come here. Lena, Kathy will stand back up there and sing for you.
You mean she'll be back of the curtain singing and I'll be out in front doing, like in the picture?
That's right.
What?
You gotta do it, Kathy. This thing is too big.
Of course she's got to do it. She's got a 5-year contract with me. Get over to that microphone, Selden.
You heard him, Kathy. Now do it.
I'll do it, Don. I'll do it, but I never want to see you again, on or off the screen.
And the way that she just says to Don, like, I'm going to do it, but I don't ever want to see you again. There's such strength in that, you know? I don't need you, and I don't want you anymore.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and my impulse was to compare her to Carrie Fisher.
Right. I had that same impulse. How weird is that?
I was just very, it's a very Princess Leia, but like in a way that is so different and so unique. And then she was only 19, which is crazy. She makes the movie honestly, Gene Kelly, good for him. Like, he did a great job. The movie feels a little masturbatory for Gene Kelly, but for me, the movie is Donnie O'Con and Debbie Reynolds. Like, those are the characters that I just love in this movie. What will bring me back is Debbie Reynolds and Donald O'Connor. I could even see myself skipping Broadway Melody.
Well, that I wrote in my notes, I'm like, this one's kind of losing me.
Yep.
The Broadway Melody. I actually haven't watched a lot of classic musicals. Like the MGM period, like Hollywood musicals. Right. I really haven't seen that many. I've never seen American in Paris, which almost makes me think we don't have any right to talk about this. But my understanding is that was kind of a typical thing in those musicals, was where they would always have kind of a showpiece number that didn't have a whole lot to do with anything. Not to say that excuses it, but it's almost like it's just sort of part of the genre, which is another thing I think is is interesting to think about with this movie is it wasn't really trying to be a groundbreaking movie.
Right.
You know, like
Yeah.
it was just another musical.
was-
and it was, in fact, it was sort
It
of
was
a musical.
handful of songs
Right.
that already existed and were popular, and they had to write a story around
Right.
them.
It's pretty impressive that like we can watch it now, and there's like one scene where we're like, yeah, that got hung up on the trappings of the other musicals of the day, you know?
Right.
I could probably take or leave that whole thing, except for the scene where he's
Walking.
dancing with Sid Charisse, and there's that
That train
yes.
billowing.
Oh my!
Mhm. That's an
That's just-
unreal.
That's just the
image.
technicality of that. Is like I can't believe that was captured on film.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
like we that scene belongs there just so we have it on film.
Right. Yeah. And you look. Yeah. I mean, you look at it, and it took me a while to be like, oh, whoa, wait.
Like there's got to be fans blowing very specifically,
Mm-hmm.
and they just have to have their marks and their timing down so perfectly to get that
Yeah.
train, I guess we call it. Yeah,
Yeah.
just a long flowing fabric to just blow the right way and move between them.
And I was reading in, of course, IMDb trivia that she like that almost blew her over. Like
Sid Charisse, the
yeah,
dancer.
mhm.
Yeah.
Because it was such a heavy. It was like 50 feet of fabric. But yeah, just I can still see that image in my mind.
Yeah.
You're right. That almost does make the whole scene worth it.
What's kind of weird is that, you know, for how much we've talked about how much we love Gene Kelly, Donald O'Connor, and Debbie Reynolds, the one person who actually did win an Oscar for this movie we haven't even talked about yet.
Jean Hagen.
Jean Hagen, who's good. My feeling is that she probably won that Oscar because people at the time knew her voice wasn't like that.
Yeah.
And so they were like, it's kind of one of those like, well, that's impressive, which is really funny to me. Like, that's what's impressive.
Right. She really changed her voice. Debbie Reynolds learned how to dance.
Right.
But okay, so let's give Jean Hagen some
Attention.
attention. Yeah,
As Lena Lamont. She is
did
kind of the
win-
closest thing you have to a villain in this movie.
Right. She did win the Oscar. It's a funny performance. She really sells that character. Like
Yeah.
I really don't. I feel like it's a character that could have been really over the top and archetypal and terrible, but I don't find her to be that.
Right.
You wouldn't want to call the papers and say that Lena Lamont is a big, fat liar.
Lena, did you send this stuff out?
I gave an exclusive story to every paper in town.
Lena, you'll never get away with it. Rod, call the papers back.
Oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you, Arya.
Don't tell me what to do, Lena.
What do you think I am, dumb or something? I had my lawyer go over my contract.
Contract?
Yeah, and I control my publicity, not you.
Yeah?
Yeah, the studio's responsible for every word printed about me. If I don't like it, I can sue.
What?
I can sue. If you tell the papers about Kathy Selden, it would be detrimental and deleterious to my career.
She knows how to get ahead. She's savvy.
It's business.
Yeah.
It's show business.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
I mean, and
I think a worse performance would have made that seem super implausible.
right. That's true. Because I don't think you're sort of denying that was, you know, within her capabilities as a character, you know?
Yeah, because you see her with Don and how she is using their relationship just like he is, but she's at least smart enough to never let it break, like never
Yeah.
let her guard down.
The most tragic figure in the whole movie. You get the sense that, like, you know, the coda to this movie is just Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah,
Her career's over after that movie, you know?
Yeah.
Or after the last scene in Singin' in the Rain. you know?
right. Yeah, that is pretty tragic, but we're not supposed to think about that
No.
too much, obviously. But she's one of the funnier characters in the movie and sustains the comedy. But she kind of has to be the straight man, but also this over-the-top sort of character, which is not common for the straight man. Like the butt of the
Right,
joke
right.
is not usually so over-the-top like this, and she pulls it off very well, as well as all that kind of conniving scheming that she
Right.
pulls off, which doesn't come out of nowhere and isn't out of place with her character. And speaking of comedy that was inherent in Lena Lockwood, just in general, this movie is much funnier than I remember it being, especially the opening scene. Just the the satire of Hollywood gossip columns and that sort of thing.
Oh, look who's arriving now. It's that famous sick girl of the screen, the darling of the flapper set, Zelda Sanders. Zelda! You red-hot patch, J. Cumberland Spenville III, that well-known eligible bachelor. Zelda's had so much unhappiness. I hope this time it's really love.
The movie's a lot more biting in a way than I'd expect.
It's very aware of the artificiality, not only of movies themselves, but of Hollywood culture.
Yeah,
like and it's just putting it all on display, I think.
Yeah,
but with a wink, in a way that even people who are in Hollywood would find charming and find something in it that's worth laughing at, but still celebrating. You know?
Yeah, but then like the song "Beautiful Girls."
Yes, that's supposed to be a joke, right? Like,
yes,
I can't. Like I wrote,
yeah,
it
is. But I think it's a pretty vicious joke too. It's just straight up taking everything vacuous about how Hollywood portrays and treats women,
right? Putting them on just display.
Yeah, literally putting them on display and the different versions of a woman you can have.
With a suit of tweed, it started quite a riot. And if you must wear frocks to the opera, Dame Fashion says dye it. Black is best when you're in court. The judge will be impressed. But white is right when you're a bride and you want to be well dressed. Beautiful girl, for you I've got a passion, beautiful.
But it fits so smoothly in as a Hollywood movie musical number,
right? That
it also is, in a way, deconstructing or just attacking that idea of what movie musicals have done in the past to women. And I just found it to be a lot more rich in its commentary, to be a little grandiose with my language, than I remember it being.
Well, I think you're right, though, because, I mean, there is that opening scene, which in itself, the comedy is in everything you're seeing that actually happened is the exact opposite of what he's saying.
Mm-hmm.
So his whole success story is fabricated. I just think that it deals with that understanding that what you're seeing on the movies is a facade very well, because even later on, there's when they're filming the silent movie and he's talking to Lena, and they're supposed to be looking like they're so in love with each other and they're saying like the most vicious things to one another,
right?
You know, and then later on, even I think when it gets to the dancing numbers, so for instance, in that, again, bringing up that "You Were Meant for Me" song, it's almost like it's using this understood facade of movie production, like you know that everything there is, it's a prop or it's all fake, and it's sort of like using that to frame the characters in what's actually happening,
right?
And so I don't know. I feel like by doing it that way, if you were sort of cynical about the love story in there, it was giving you permission to just get swept up in it.
Yeah.
Because if you were questioning whether you should get swept up in this or not, because, it's just got this very romantic feel to it, you're like, well, of course it does, because it's all
fake.
He just
showed you how he created
on a
the
movie.
romantic feel.
He just showed you, he basically just peeled back the curtain and said, this is how we manipulate your emotions. But still, at least in this movie, this is a very real thing that's happening within that,
I also kind of felt, I don't know how I feel about this. This might be overanalyzing, or it might be for a different conversation or essay or something, but like the idea that Don as a character needs that artificiality to express himself. Because I don't remember exactly what he says, but he says something like, this isn't the right setting for me to say these things. And it was just real life.
Yeah.
They were outside the studio building, and he said, this isn't the right setting. And he takes her in, and it is supposed to be like magical because she's this, not very experienced film actress, and for all the lights to be on her, and for her to have the fan blowing her hair and the moonlight to be on her. This is all very like, romantic for her and making her feel special. But there's also this thing in my mind as I watch it, I'm like, oh, but he can't be real with anybody ever. Don has to have artificiality in order for himself to feel comfortable.
Right.
He has to have a sheen and a veneer, which may or may not be something the movie's actually saying. I would be surprised if it was. Because it is kind of interesting that his love and relationship with Lena was all fake, but he couldn't tell Kathy that he loved her unless everything was fake. Like,
right.
I don't know.
I think it is intentionally playing with some of those ideas, though. That might actually be where there is a strong connection between Singin' in the Rain and La La Land.
Yeah.
One of the parts I was going to point out that is, I think, a direct reference in La La Land to Singin' in the Rain is the scene where they are just sort of walking through 3 different movie sets right next to each other in Singin' in the Rain, you know, and it's just sort of this idea of like they're just cranking these things out.
Right.
And especially in the silent era, that was super easy to do because you could be as loud as you wanted to be right next to
you could film a train scene next to
like have a big shootout of a Western right next to like a silent love scene.
Right.
And, you know.
Yeah.
La La Land has a very similar scene, but the funny thing is because it's modern day and there is sound, they walk in front of a production, but they have to whisper their dialogue because they have to be very quiet.
Right.
But it's still this idea, and I think even another movie from this year, Hail Caesar, plays with it too. It's just this idea of like the people who work in Hollywood. It's much more of a job than we maybe as viewers would like to think of it as.
Right.
You know? And how much of it really is high art.
Yeah.
And how much of it is just a business. You know, you got a character like Don Lockwood, just someone who sees himself as doing a job.
Yeah.
But Gene Kelly as the actual choreographer and, you know, someone who really took dance very seriously was injecting so much art into that movie. So it's sort of like playing with this idea of like how much of Hollywood is just putting out stuff.
Yeah. Going to work.
Yeah. And how much of it is actually putting all of yourself into it. You know?
Yeah. That feels like a much more modern idea to really like break it down.
Sure. I think, and maybe this is again just me bringing in too like more depth than was actually being, but what it made me think of is the artifice that's in the movies often shows itself in odd ways in real life as well. Singin' in the Rain is showing you this is how we create real life in the movies. You know, maybe you're not literally jumping in puddles because you fell in love, you know, but boy, isn't that just like the idea you want in your head of that,
right?
You know,
isn't it great to see somebody doing that?
Yeah. Isn't that the perfect representation of what you're actually feeling? You know? And it's artificial, but who cares? Like, it's great, you know? I think one of the reasons why I think this has to be a 5-star film, at least for me, is when you really stop to think about movies. And who knows if movies as we know them will be, how long they'll be around for. Will we always have movies?
Right.
You know? I can't think of a better movie that I would want hundreds and hundreds of years from now when someone's like trying to teach someone this is what a movie was. And not just because Singin' in the Rain is obviously going to show you this is how movies were made, but more because like this is like the best we could show you of that represents what movies are, you know, like
and what they're for,
what they can do for you, the way that they can actually like soothe you. I think like there's something soothing about Singin' in the Rain, and also on the technical level of seeing humanity do things, like seeing the acrobatics of what a human being could do, and synchronous, and showing music and how music was a part of humanity. Like it's all there. If you look at the other 10 films that are on the AFI list, you know, does Citizen Kane show the best of humanity? No, certainly not. It's a fantastic, wonderful film. Maybe Casablanca. But like, you know, The Godfather, Gone with the Wind, none of these are movies that I would want people years and years and years from now as like, they don't match Singin' in the Rain for me as far as like what is just a joyful representation of humanity and what you can do with film.
But Broadway Melody is really long.
Yeah, and I know those aliens years from now watching Singin' in the Rain are going to think that exact same thing. Or maybe that's all they'll like.
How does this fit in? Maybe
that's
it's
all
like
they will like.
Esoteric, and they like things that are disjointed. No, that's a really great point. This movie does. I think cynicism is probably the only kryptonite to enjoying this movie. Maybe that's where my mind was a little bit too much when I was watching it, and thought to drop it from 4.5. Because in light of everything we've talked about, the idea that one very impressive dance sequence goes on too long and doesn't fit very well with the rest of the movie
Sure.
is a small complaint.
Could be a half-star complaint.
Could be a half-star complaint, but I don't think so, because genuinely, I mean, I said it earlier, Debbie Reynolds is keeping it up there. Like, I just keep seeing her expressions, I keep seeing her movement, I keep hearing her dialogue, and it's just, man.
So I did just want to talk briefly about La La Land, and just say that if you're planning on watching Singin' in the Rain and then watching La La Land immediately after, I don't know if I would recommend that because only because, hey, La La Land's a great movie. I thought I actually liked it a lot, but seeing La La Land highlights how amazing the dance sequences are in Singin' in the Rain. In a way, because there's nothing even against the sequences in La La Land. It just kind of shows you how almost superhuman the Singin' in the Rain sequences are. I give Damien Chazelle a lot of credit for also, just like in Singin' in the Rain, using the camera. These dance sequences are working with the camera, and it's a film musical. But sometimes he's using the camera to kind of hide certain things as well. There's no Singin' in the Rain.
Yeah.
But I like what it's doing. I hope La La Land touches enough people to where we kind of see more things like it.
Well, cool. I'm excited to see La La Land. You've talked me off the ledge of dropping Singin' in the Rain a half star.
Wow, my work is done.
I'm gonna keep it at 4.5. I just don't think that I don't think I've given myself over to it as fully as you have. But
we talked about 5 stars before.
Yeah.
Something
definitely see.
Something unique really has to happen when you're watching something, a movie, to give it 5 stars, I think.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So are we? We're good.
We're
best buds.
Yeah, we're best buds.
It's not complicated.
No.
It's further than a mutual understanding.
Yeah, definitely. I feel. I'm sorry that I went and set new precedent in not giving an updated rating, but I definitely.
But now you're more assured where you're at.
Yes, I am.
Glad we were able to. The judges are nodding their heads.
They are. Oh wow, vigorously. Calm down, guys. All right.
Well, why don't we...
They're also telling us to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
We were going to do a big Broadway melody dance number now.
We were, but they're telling us we don't have time, and the piano player left.
All right. Well, then, if that's the case, and...
I guess we better wrap up.
Yeah, I guess we'll just... why don't we talk about what we're going to be discussing in the next episode?
Well, with the Oscars coming up, we're going to... I think we always do this.
Yeah,
we always kind of do January, February... We lean on the Oscars. So we're going to talk about Oscars past. And there have only been 3 movies that have won 11 Oscars. They share the record for most Oscars won. That is Ben-Hur, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King.
Right.
And the third is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. And
what a coincidence.
The movie we're going to be doing for our next episode, Titanic. I have never seen Titanic.
I don't understand how you got by not seeing Titanic. Like how you sort of slipped by.
I don't know.
It was such a phenomenon, you know?
I know. Like I was fully aware of it. Like I know that Titanic was a huge deal. Right. And I remember the hype and all that. And, James Cameron yelling, "I am king of the world," when he won Best Director.
Oh, I forgot about that. But yeah, there was that.
Oh yeah, and you've seen Titanic?
Maybe you've really seen it, and I've only seen...
I've seen it for what it is. PG-13 and R rules were so strict in my house. I was 13 and I still couldn't see a PG-13 movie.
And it's probably especially Titanic because I still don't really know. I don't really know how that got that PG-13, which I'm sure we will discuss. The same way I don't understand how you slipped by not seeing Titanic. I don't understand how Titanic slipped by.
There's a lot of mystery surrounding Titanic. Yeah.
The R rating. Yeah. And I certainly saw it quite a bit in high school. So
you saw it quite a bit?
I did because I saw it twice in the theater.
Boy.
And then my household just had that dual VHS Titanic box, and so I did watch it a few times when it came out on video too, but I haven't seen it since. I have no idea how this movie's going to hold up over 20 years.
And I also remember, we'll talk about this next time, 97 was a big year for me movie wise.
Oh, okay.
As far as my memory.
Okay,
so we'll talk about that.
So we'll have to. We're gonna jump back into the '90s era of our nostalgia.
Yeah, but I have no nostalgia about Titanic. Anyway,
it'd be weird to have nostalgia about a movie you've never seen.
No, I do have memories surrounding it. It'll be another not confessional, but like
about Titanic or about that year, both. Everything. 90s.
About the night I was on my way to see Titanic and didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't want to talk? Do we not want to do this movie?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. But
I'm intrigued now. I can't wait to do this episode.
I bet you are.
You just left us on a huge cliffhanger.
I know.
At the end of this episode.
I know.
What
and
happened the night Ryan was going to go see
interesting?
Titanic?
I have told many people that I've never seen Titanic. I have never told anybody that I was on my way to see Titanic
and
one time and didn't see it.
Wow.
That's the first time I've ever told anybody that.
This episode will be confessional.
It's not confessional.
Okay.
But it's probably going to be psychologically revealing or something.
All right.
That night is very vivid in my memory. It was kind of a terrible night.
Okay. Jeez Louise. I hope you can watch Titanic with sort of a fresh slate.
Yeah, I don't
clean
think
slate.
it's Titanic that... Who knows?
For someone our age,
yeah,
to be able to talk about Titanic having just seen it for the first time is a rare thing to find, I think. And I'm excited to do that.
And it's also kind of a big thing. Like this, it's not something that... I think there was a time where I prided myself, oh, I've never seen Titanic. Like you, Ruse.
Are you okay with not being able to say that?
I don't know. That's actually something I'll need to think about. We may be putting out a brief adjustment episode. Ryan has not been able to give this up. We're going to watch something else.
We thought it was a good idea. We had to retract that.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine with it.
Settle in. It's a long one.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
2 VHS.
Do I have to watch
tapes.
it on VHS? We will see how this episode goes. First, you said we should do it, and I was like, sounds good. And then I said the thing I said that I've never told anybody, and then the idea of me not being able to say I haven't seen Titanic anymore came up, and I suddenly have trepidation.
Second thoughts.
I don't know.
Cold feet.
Yeah.
Cold Titanic feet, as if
I guess
you're in
it's
the
only
icy
appropriate. Yeah. The water is rising, and my feet and ankles are chilly now.
That's right. Ryan,
I will think about how much I'll share.
I can guarantee your heart will go on if you watch this.
Why did that make me laugh?
And I'm gonna give you this necklace.
I hate you for making me laugh at that.
I'm gonna give you this necklace to wear while you're watching it, and I want you to wear only that necklace.
For the record, he has asked me to wear only that necklace for every episode we've done.
But this is the most fitting.
Yeah.
This is the time. I'm sure a lot of you out there have seen Titanic before. I'm not going to necessarily say you need to watch it again because it's probably just been so ingrained in your mind if you watched it as much as a lot of other people did 20 years ago. But
thanks, Nate.
But I think that if you want to join along in our conversation, I think it would be good to revisit. So I
think we've categorically proven that it's important to watch movies you used to love and see whether you still love them.
Yeah, if there's one thing this podcast has shown, it's shown that there's some odd value in that.
Yeah.
So please watch it with us and let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you, before we record even, just get your thoughts. And there's a lot of ways to do that on this podcast.
Right.
There's our website. CanWeStillBeFriends.net is the website.
It is.
Most people don't go to websites anymore, though. They tend to just stick to social media. Websites were really popular in 97, 20 years ago, when Titanic was...
still had AOL keywords.
Yep. And dial-up.
Right.
So if you're still on dial-up, that is the best way to get to us. Mm-hmm. But if you're not...
social media feeds would be a nightmare.
Yeah, social media is...
But we do have those, yeah.
There, too, if you need it. So we're on
Twitter.
Facebook. We'd love to just hear from you, your thoughts on Titanic. Did you have that big Leo poster in your room? I know I did.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also call and give us your best Celine Dion. I'm not going to stop you. The number, if you would like to do that, is 847-306-9532. Give us a call. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, or you could talk about Singin' in the Rain.
Yeah.
Or any of our other episodes if you're listening to back catalog.
It's never too late to jump through
not.
those archives and, jump into those archives and
jump around
those archives, wade in those archives.
Yeah, just splash.
Yeah. Well, we do want to just thank you for listening because you know what? There are thousands and thousands of podcasts out there. And so the fact that you just happen to pick ours and actually listen to it and listen to it all the way to the end.
To this point, yeah, geez.
I just want to thank you for doing that.
You guys are the real heroes.
Yes. If you do like what you're hearing, just let your friends know, let your family know.
Rate us on iTunes.
Rate us on iTunes.
That helps.
It does. And
thanks for listening.
Thank you. We'll see you next time. Not see ya. We'll catch you next time.
We'll talk to you.